All right, I want to forewarn you that I'm going to ramble a little bit today, so please forgive me as we jump in. I got all kinds of thoughts. I want to start by saying I just got home from the doctor, and this is a funny and embarrassing story. At the Dad Tired Retreat, we played an epic wiffle ball tournament, kind of an impromptu wiffle ball tournament. And probably outside of guys getting baptized and Jesus moving in major ways, and there was lots of life change, outside of all of that, the wiffle ball tournament definitely made the top 5, like coolest and most fun memories I've had in a long time. There's just, I don't know, we probably had 100 guys. That might be an exaggerated, maybe 50 guys jump into the wiffle ball tournament. And we all were acting just like a bunch of little boys. And I don't know when the last time probably any of us have really done that. Certainly I haven't done that in a long time. And I just had so much fun. That being said, I try to be a hero and make a save out in left field to catch a foul ball. And I landed super hard and it like knocked the wind out of me, and I was trying not to be a baby. Anyway, we're a week out from that, and I'm still like, the pain is getting worse every day. And so my wife's like, you should just go make sure you didn't like break a rib or puncture a lung or something. So I was at the doctor today, and good news is I did not puncture anything or break anything. The doctor was like making fun of me. He's like, what happened? And I told him I was in a wiffle ball tournament, and he's like, okay, so we'll just change the story that you like were trying to save a baby from an alligator and you like wrestled an alligator. Sounds much cooler than a wiffle ball tournament. So, yeah, I'm fine. Just, I got some bruising. And, but anyway, as I was sitting at the doctor's office, I was sitting on that little, what do they call that? Like tissue paper or whatever that stuff is. Super, I don't know what that is, but I'm sitting in that quiet doctor room, and I'm just kind of sitting quietly. And all of a sudden, the air conditioning unit went off. And if you've ever had that happen, where this actually happened at the retreat, I noticed this at the retreat, where you didn't notice that the air conditioning unit was so loud until it wasn't there. And then when it stopped, you realized that was making a ton of noise and it got a lot quieter. And I think some of us in life, we get to a spot where we don't realize all the noise we have going on in life is actually really, really loud. We're just kind of used to the chaos. You're used to waking up and managing the kids and managing work and trying to figure out the bills. And you just kind of get into this survival moment. And then all of a sudden you stop and you realize like, dang, there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's really loud. I think this is why the guys love coming to the retreat, is because you kind of stop for 3 days and all of a sudden you get quiet and God speaks to you. This is why I'm a huge fan of the retreat, because God speaks to you and you start to realize like, dang, there's stuff going on underneath the surface of my soul that I may have never noticed or heard until I got quiet. And so one, I'm just encouraging you to do that too. If you've missed the retreat, find other ways. This is why Sabbath is such a big deal. And I know you might be hearing me and you're kind of dismissing like, all right, let's get to the content. But I really want you to take this seriously. Like, do you have moments throughout your day and throughout your week, throughout your year, where you just get quiet before the Lord? How much are you missing because you're used to the chaos of life? You're used to the hum of the air conditioning unit. But if it turns off, you might realize, oh, I did not realize how loud that really is. And I bet you, if you are a guy, I bet you have a lot, dude, that is trying to stir up that God would want to speak to you. And you might be missing it if your life is just chaotic and just loud. And by loud, I mean all the busyness of your reality. I want to talk about Charlie Kirk. And I know maybe me just saying that made you feel some kind of way. Listen, I just want to say, first of all, I kind of subscribe to the idea that not everyone with a microphone in their face needs to talk about every major world event. Okay. So some people I've heard some people get really upset, like, you didn't say anything, and so I'm not following you anymore. I'm not going to listen to what you say. And I don't know, like I listen to a bunch of podcasts and stuff, and I don't need everyone that I listen to share their opinion or even to make remarks about every major world thing. So I don't fall under that. I don't subscribe to that. I imagine that a lot of people are processing internally and with their close friends and family. And I don't think every person with a microphone needs to make a public statement. Okay. So I just want to preface with that. I also want to say, I don't even have a news app on my phone. Quite literally, I don't have any news. I have no access to news. Like, everything that I hear in the news is coming from my wife and what she tells me and what she thinks is important for me to know. about the world. I heard about the Charlie Kirk news from my wife. She texted me. That's how I first heard about it. So I say that because there are a lot of people who are way more qualified to have an opinion or to make that you should go listen to if you want to kind of talk about this thing. And listen, my wife and I have been listening to all kinds of podcasts and news stories and things like that, specifically on what happened last week with Charlie Kirk. And there are people who are, again, much more qualified than me. I don't even have a news app. The reason I want to bring this up is because there's a couple things that I think pertain to us specifically about this event with Charlie Kirk and you as a husband, father, disciple of Jesus. This is why I'm bringing it up, okay? Beyond the fact that it is incredibly tragic and sad. And I think all of us are feeling that. Again, if you were just to quiet your soul for a little bit, you kind of turn down the noise of the world in your life and all the chaos of your life, and you just sat for a second, I bet you probably feel sad, as you should. This is incredibly tragic. But I've heard a lot of people talk about, as my wife is reading me these stories and I'm hearing more kind of opinions or commentary about it, I've heard a lot of people referring to this as a political assassination. And this is really why I wanted to bring this up on the podcast today. For sure, Charlie was involved in politics. We actually listened to, not that I have any special, everyone that has some kind of knowledge of Charlie Kirk in some way. But it's kind of was, the reason this is hitting us too is because we were listening to Charlie Kirk almost nightly as a family, mainly because my son is in classical conversations and they do a lot of debate in classical conversations. And so my son became very fascinated about debate and how to debate. And so we would watch these videos as a family, and we would learn how to defend your ideas. Like, what do you stand for, and how do you defend your opinions or what you believe is truth? How do you make reasonable arguments without cutting somebody down or just kind of shouting at them? How do you form an opinion and be able to articulate an opinion? And so we were watching videos constantly in the last several months of Charlie Kirk. And my son in the car, he's 14, he would say, you got mom and dad, bring up a topic and let me try to debate you on it. And so it became kind of a fun little thing that we've done in the family. And so when I heard the news, I was cooking dinner and it hit me, as it did for all of you, so many of you, it hit me really hard. I started to cry. I remember feeling like I was surprised by my emotions. I was surprised by how much it hit me. And so I cried. I couldn't really, I was trying to fight it really hard. I'm like, I didn't know the guy personally, and this happens, unfortunately, from time to time. But for some reason, it hit me really hard emotionally. I remember grabbing my son. I could tell it affected him pretty heavily too. And I remember I hugged him and I cried with him. And, it was just a really heavy time. But anyway, I'm getting off track. The point is that a lot of people have been talking about it as a political assassination. And as much as Charlie Kirk was involved in politics, and he most certainly was, when I look at his life and I watch all the debates, and I've watched hours of them, my sense is more that before he made any kind of political stance, which again, of course he did, he made much more of a theological stance. And his theological stance was like quite literally 10 minutes before he was assassinated, murdered brutally. 10 minutes before that, he gave a clear and concise articulation of the gospel. If you go back and watch the video, somebody had asked, and he made a very clear and concise articulation of the gospel and what it looks like for somebody to be saved. Who is Jesus? Why and how we depend our lives on him for the sake of salvation. And it was just so, it's not lost on me that moments before he would meet Jesus, he was able to clearly articulate a gospel presentation, which is just so fascinating. And so I say all that because much, much more than a political assassination, it feels like a martyrdom. And again, dude, I don't even have a news app. I'm not a political commentator. I couldn't even, like, in the least bit. I don't know anything about stuff like this. But when I look at Charlie, I look at a man who genuinely was trying to follow Jesus, to understand who Christ was, to make theological stances, and to point people to what he believed was the best way for humanity to flourish. And that was all viewed through a biblical lens. And again, much more, in my opinion, than a political stance. He was making a biblical stance. Based on what I know in Scripture, this is how humans ought to operate. One man should be married to one woman. They should be together and to have kids if they are able, and to raise a family and to be faithful to each other and to raise their children to believe on and in Jesus for their sake of their salvation and their hope in a world that is increasingly hopeless. And this is really what, he was able to articulate that really in ways that very few, if anyone, could. He had such a beautiful way of articulating gospel truth and biblical truth. And so I think the reason, for me personally, I won't speak for all of us. I won't make any broad sweeping strokes here. But for me personally, when I heard of his death, it felt more like a brother in Christ being martyred for what he believed was true about Jesus. There's all kinds of political stances on Charlie Kirk on the opposing side of him, but really it wasn't his politics that made people mad. It was his desire to live godly. It was his desire to see the world through a biblical lens. I think that's why he was hated, and this is really why I wanted to bring it up today. Because if you listen to last week's podcast, I actually shared a message that I just gave at our church from 1 Peter. And in 1 Peter, Peter is talking to 5 churches in what would be modern day Turkey. And they are under the leadership of Nero. And this was for them, the original audience. I encourage you to go back and listen to last week's podcast. For them, they were suffering. They were starting to be persecuted. Again, they were fairly new, like Christianity was fairly new, maybe 30-ish years. And so they were kind of an odd people to the culture. They didn't really fit into the culture. And so they were being persecuted. But it was only the start of what was to come. Under the rule of Nero, it would become much, much bigger. Many people would die for the sake of their proclamation in Jesus. And so I posted that podcast episode mainly because I was going to be gone at the retreat. And so I wasn't home last week. And so I posted that message. But it's so fitting for where I think we are as a culture. And again, this is why I bring up Charlie Kirk, is I think he was assassinated because he believed in biblical values. And I think what's happening in our culture, again, I'm not a political commentator, but I think what's happening in our culture is there seems to be a separation, the gap between you are either all in for Jesus and what you believe about the Bible, or you are not. And there is a greater hostility towards the things of God. And this is so much like what Peter was talking to the early church about. You are experiencing, he would tell the early church, you are experiencing some hostility. You will be persecuted, but what does he do? He reminds them of their identity. And then he says, your hope is secure. Jesus' salvation is secure in you. Your hope in heaven is secure. Take heart. And his heart and his encouragement for them to take heart was not in things are going to get better. His encouragement was things are going to get worse. And yet I want you to stay focused that you are chosen specifically for this time. And this is, brother, what I would want to say to you today. What we saw in Charlie Kirk in his assassination last week may be a foreshadow of what's to come in our culture. Will everyone be assassinated? I hope not, and I don't think so. Could there be deeper, more hostile opposition to you as a man of God? Absolutely. I think that is coming. And I think the writing's on the wall. I'm not saying anything here that is incredibly profound. Do I think it will be harder for you as a man of God to lean into biblical truth and values, to follow Jesus, to make a declaration as Peter did in front of a whole bunch of people when Jesus turns to him and he says, "Who do you say I am?" And Peter says, "I believe you to be the Son of God. I believe that you are Messiah." I think that time for all of us is coming when somebody is going to look you in the eye and say, "Well, what do you believe? What do you specifically believe about Jesus? And you will have to make a public declaration. I actually believe that the way Jesus designed this whole world is best. And I know that's radically countercultural, but I actually believe the way that Jesus designed humanity is best for human flourishing. And I have a feeling that that's going to cause some great opposition for us in the future, and most certainly for our kids. And so where am I going with this? Well, at the retreat, I actually taught on the very first night on Luke chapter 9, verses 57. I want to just read this real quick. If you're at the retreat, forgive me for double storying you here. I know many of you, thousands of you, were not at the retreat. And so I just want to share something quickly that I shared at the retreat. Luke 9:57 says this: As they were going along the road, someone said to them, I will follow you wherever you go. And Jesus said to him, Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. To another he said, Follow me. But he said, Lord, let me first go and bury my father. And Jesus said to him, Leave the dead to bury their own dead, but as for you, go and proclaim the kingdom of God. Yet another said, I will follow you, Lord, but first let me say farewell to those at my home. Jesus said to him, No one who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God. Essentially, you have three different scenarios here. One is some guy kind of zealously, eagerly comes to Jesus and says, I'll follow you. This whole Jesus thing sounds great. I've seen you do miracles. Earlier in this chapter, you were feeding 5,000 people. I would love to be one of your apprentices and your disciples. Please let me follow you. And Jesus says, I don't think you've counted the cost. I'm actually homeless. And it's crazy because Jesus just in the next few verses would say, the harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few. We need more workers. And so you have this guy saying, I'll be a worker. I'll sign up. I'll follow you. And Jesus actually says, I don't think you're ready. You haven't really counted the cost. And then he goes on to go. Jesus looks to others and says, you come follow me. And they say, the timing's not right. I got a few other things. I got some other responsibilities I need to take care of before I fully invest into following you. And Jesus says, you're not fit for the kingdom. So you have two spectrums, one overzealous and then one overcautious. I need to like do a few other things before I can dive in, where the other one says, yeah, I'll come follow you. And they haven't really counted the cost. And this is why I wanted to bring this up for you as a dad tired listener. Where do you sit on that spectrum? Some of you are saying, yeah, I'm a Christian. Let's go to church. Bro, the climate, the ramifications for leaning into what it means to be a godly man is going to get harder. And so you may be overzealous in your enthusiasm to follow Jesus. And I wonder if Jesus would say to you, slow down. This could cost you a lot. Just, man, dude, imagine Charlie Kirk as a boy. I don't know when he came to Christ. I don't know when God began to woo his heart unto him. But imagine Jesus sits down with Charlie as a young boy and says, man, you're going to be used in mighty ways for my glory. You're going to point millions of people to me for my glory, and it's going to cost you your life. Are you still in? I wonder if there is a sense kind of right now. I just feel a heaviness right now for myself and also for my kids to hold discipleship, to hold following Jesus with that kind of weight. If we would say, Jesus, I really, really, really want to follow you. And he would say, it's going to cost you a ton. And listen, again, I don't want to be overly dramatic. I don't want to use what happened last week to make some, overly dramatic points. Do I think everyone's going to lose their life? I don't think so. I sure hope not. But do I think that the cost to following Jesus is going to be massively more sacrificial than you probably think it is? Yes. At the very least, even if there is no public sacrifice that you will ever have to make, even if there's no public persecution that you will ever face, at the very least, Jesus will look at you and say, okay, you can come follow me, but this is going to cost you for sure your comfort. And for sure, there are things in your life that you are thinking, I'm going to go to the grave with this. I've got some secrets. I've got some habits. I've got some addictions. I've got some things that I never want to address. And Jesus says, okay, foxes have holes. The birds of the air have nests. I have no place to lay my head. What is he saying? Like, count the cost. You're going to be homeless. And I wonder if Jesus would say to you, okay, if you're really going to follow me, it's going to cost, like, we got to bring up those old skeletons. We got to deal with the habits. We got to deal with the addictions. Are you sure? Are you sure you want to follow me? It's going to cost you a lot. At the very least, Jesus is going to get into every area of your life. And it will, at the very least, cost you that. I can promise you that. And at most, I don't even want to make a claim at most, but potentially it could cost you more on a more public scale. That there may be moments, just like Peter had to make a public declaration for Christ, you may have to also. And before you kind of get overzealous or gung-ho about following Jesus because it's a new fad, or it seems like the right thing to do, or there's a political party that kind of is nudging you to do that, just slowly with your Bible open, in prayer, in the quiet places, sit before the Lord and say, take a deep breath. God, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to follow you? And then when you make that decision, say, God, I'm serious and I'm going to count the cost. I'm terrified, but I really do want to follow you. This year we baptized, we're trying to get the numbers. We always do spontaneous baptisms at the retreat. I've heard a dozen, I've heard 16. I don't know. Me and Caleb were baptizing guys in the pool. It was incredible. The rest of the guys, hundreds of guys surrounded the pool as men were getting baptized. And I would say we had at least a dozen guys get baptized spontaneously. Guys who were not planning to get baptized ended up getting in the water. And there was Caleb and I say, literally while we were in the water, we looked at each other and said, something feels different this year. There was a deep sincerity. It wasn't this like kind of gung-ho, man, I had a mountaintop experience and let me, get baptized in front of everybody. This will make a great picture. There was this almost the somberness. There was this deep sincerity. There was a counting of the cost vibe this year where the guys who got in the water, there was a heaviness. Like, I am scared, but I've counted the cost. I've been slow to make this decision, but I'm going to do it because I know that there's no one else worth giving up my life for. You are either a slave to your own sins and passions. You will chase after all the things of the world, hoping that it will satisfy you, or you will be a slave to your master Jesus, who actually offers freedom and hope and satisfaction that the world cannot offer you. And there just seemed to be kind of a counting of the cost in that way this year. And it was really beautiful. It was really, really sweet. And so I'm asking you, brother, like to slowly, in the quiet places, for no crowd, nobody's watching, get alone with the Lord, turn the AC unit off, sit in silence and just ask, Lord, am I really willing to do this? Because I think the time is now to make that decision. It's certainly coming, if it's not now, where things are being separated. And God is saying, okay, there is no more kind of lukewarm, foot in both camps, apathetic, like the time is now. Are you all in as my disciple, or are you not? Some of you are still in that stage, like the other guys who said, yeah, I know I'm all in for sure. I'm all in. I'm listening to this podcast. I go to church. I'm all in, but I just got a few loose ends to tie up. Just got a few more numbers to add to the bank account. I got a few more things to do at work. Got to get this addiction under control by myself. Got to get these habits. Let me just get some days under my belt where I'm kind of behaving well and I can convince myself I'm really serious, and then I'll go all in. And Jesus says, you're not fit. You're not fit. Which are crazy hard words to hear Jesus say, by the way. I think Jesus is looking for laborers, and he's looking for those who will put their hands on the plow and not look back. Here's the way I think of it. I think that you should slowly make the decision if you are all in or all out. I think you should count the cost slowly and quietly. And then when you say yes, you go full force. You do not look back. You put your hand to the plow. You do not look back, and you say, I am all in following Jesus. And brother, you just need to, for yourself, I'm going to wrap up this podcast in the next couple minutes. When I do, what I want you to do is turn it off wherever you are, listening in the car, mowing your lawn, at the gym, whatever you're doing. Just get quiet before the Lord and ask slowly of yourself, am I really all in? What is my butt first? This is what I asked the guys in a really weird way at the retreat. I said, what's your butt? What's your butt first? And you just have to ask yourself honestly, what's my butt first? I want to follow Jesus, but first let me do this. Or maybe you say, no, gee, I'm all in, and you haven't really counted the cost. You've been overly eager without actually sitting and really counting the cost. Are you all in? Are you all in? Because what happens when you don't count the cost is you jump in, you get excited, you You get going, and then when things get hard, you're like, actually, this is too hard. I'm out. And so Jesus says, I need laborers. I need laborers. I want you to join me. But I want laborers who have really counted the cost. There's right at the end of chapter 9 in Luke, this is where he has this interaction with these men who are potentially going to be disciples. And then in the very next chapter, chapter 10, at the start of that, Jesus sends out 72. And I told the guys at the retreat, he should have sent out 75, but he sent out 72. And you would think in reading the story, like you could read the story and be like, man, they should have just done it. They should have just gone all in. They shouldn't have hesitated, or they should have really counted the cost before they went all in. And I want that. I don't want that to be said about you. I don't want people to look at your life and say, man, he should have done it. He should have gone all in. I don't want you to look back at the end of your life, if you are fortunate enough to be able to lay on a deathbed and to look back at your life in old age. I don't want you to be like, I should have done it, man. I should have just gone all in. What was I doing? Why did I hesitate? Or why did I give up? Why did I get all gung ho and then not go in fully, or bail when it got hard? There should have been 75 disciples sent out. Instead, there were 72. May that not be your story, bro. May it not be said of you that they said, yeah, he didn't really count the cost. He bailed because it got hard, or he never really went all in. Seemed like he got serious about going all in on work, hobbies, building the bank account, doing some fun stuff that he wanted to do, but he didn't go all in for Jesus. May that not be said of you. Be slow. Get away in a quiet place. Slowly and seriously contemplate whether you want to follow Jesus or not. And then when you do, go all in. I love you, brother. I'll see you next week.